She founded an architectural concrete company.
He founded a $100 million clothing company.
She took the world by storm as a social media star.
He took the world by storm as a famous serial entrepreneur.
Together we started a business.
And had babies.
Now we're figuring out the best ways to do both.
Join us as we learn from other entrepreneurs going through the same life struggles.
As they share their life hacks about success, love, kids,
and everything in between.
Hey, Hal, welcome to the Pretty and Punk podcast, man. So good to have you on. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, but I love both of you. Like, just seeing you makes me happy. So thanks for having me on. This is cool.
Yeah, great to have another great dad. We've watched a lot of your stuff. We take in a lot of your content. So it's great to have you on because you're from what we can tell, you're a really good dad and kind of the epitome of what this whole show is about.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I try to be. I think that I wasn't before always the best, and having to, I had to kind of have a come to Jesus moment, if you will, when I realized that I was a workaholic, mm-hmm. and I wasn't giving my kids the time and energy from me that they deserved. And then I got cancer, and then that really was the wake up call. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're all human and we all deal with that. And I think we still, even consciously thinking about those things, I still struggle with it every day.
Yeah,
sure.
For our listeners who don't know your story, could you dive back and just really kind of explain to, because I think it for context, they need to understand. I mean, you're a person who's been through so much.
Yeah.
It's absolute. I mean, if anybody had a reason to throw in a towel, it would be you. It would be, you'd be at least at the top of that list. And I think your story is so powerful. Could you go back to the beginning and kind of tell us your story?
Yeah. So I guess a good place to start, I was 20 years old when I kind of had my first really, life-changing experience, adversity, if you will. I was driving home one night from work. Actually, I'd given a speech at a sales conference. I was in sales, and driving home that night, my car was hit head-on by a drunk driver at 80 miles per hour, and I was found dead. I broke 11 bones that night, and when they had to use the jaws of life, I was pinned inside the car, and they had to use the jaws of life to cut the roof off and pull me out. And when they did, I had been losing blood for almost an hour, and I bled out, and my heart stopped beating, and I stopped breathing for approximately 6 minutes. I was rushed on a helicopter to the hospital where they revived me on the medevac helicopter, and I spent 6 days in a coma, and I flatlined twice more during that coma. And when I came out of the coma, I woke up not knowing how did I get here? And I found out I have 11 broken bones. I was never going to walk again. That was the prognosis. I had permanent brain damage, which I always joke that my wife will vouch and my kids will vouch for the brain damage. But it was, I think like all of us, you could say the world's been hit head on by a car right now. You know what I mean? And to me, it's all it is that experience is an adversity, and we all face different adversities in our life. It could be a bankruptcy or the loss of a loved one or a depression or a financial challenge, right? But we're all faced with the same opportunity to choose how we'll respond. And so for me, I decided I can't change that I was in a car accident, but I get to choose my experience of life. And I don't want to be depressed. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be scared. I don't want to be sad. I'm going to live every moment in acceptance, accepting what I can't change. I'm going to be at peace. I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to maintain unwavering faith that I can turn my life around. And the doctors thought I was in denial because I was so positive. They thought I was delusional. Like, this kid doesn't understand, he's obviously not, it hasn't registered what we're telling him. And 3 weeks later, I took my first step. The doctors couldn't explain it, but I took my first step, and the rest is kind of history, as they say. And then you fast forward 2008. So 9 years later, I had a financial collapse, if you will. The economy crashed like many people in the world. I lost over half my income, and I got depressed. I lost my house to the bank, and ended up, I created this morning ritual, which we may talk more about this, I'm sure, at some point, but I created this morning ritual that turned my life around within 2 months. The economy was still declining, but I doubled my income in those 2 months. I went from being depressed to being the most confident I'd ever been. And I went from being physically the worst shape of my life to committing to run a 52-mile ultra marathon. And my life changed so fast. I went to my wife, Ursula, and I said, sweetheart, I just signed another client. Our income is the highest it's ever been. Like, this is crazy. I said, it feels like a miracle. It's all this morning routine that I'm doing every day, doing my morning ritual. It feels like a miracle. And she goes, sweetheart, it's like your miracle morning. Wow. And I go, yeah, I love that, miracle morning. And so I started putting my schedule as miracle morning. And, the rest is kind of history, as they say, in terms of now I then decided I needed to teach it to other people. And then it became a book. And that book just surpassed 2 million copies sold. And now it's a movie coming out, the Miracle Morning movie. And it was all this little morning routine that, because it changed my life. And I think this is true for all of us. Like, when you figure something out, or you experience or you learn something that benefits your life in a profound way, I feel like as human beings, as part of the human family, we kind of have a responsibility to pay it forward and to share it with other people. And that was my mission. And, and now it did what it became, this big movement. And then last but not least, 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a rare aggressive form of cancer. I was 37 years old. My heart was failing, my lung was collapsed, and my kidneys were failing. And the doctor, they could not figure out what was wrong. I went from hospital to hospital to specialist to specialist. They finally diagnosed me with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is a very aggressive blood cancer that has a 30% survival rate, 20 to 30%. So, the other side of that coin is that I was being told I had a 70 to 80% chance I was going to die in a matter of weeks. And, with a daughter at the time, my daughter was 7, my son was 4, as parents, there's nothing more terrifying than the possibility of leaving your kids without you, and dying especially while they're young. I mean, any age, but so yeah, I had to take the same approach that I did with the car accident. I went, okay, how did I walk again when the doctors thought it was nearly impossible? When the odds were against me, how did I defy the odds? And I decided there were 2 decisions. I maintained unwavering faith that I could walk again. I visualized it. I prayed about it. I meditated on it. I put all my energy into that. And I feel like that healed my body. And I go, I'm going to do the same thing with the cancer. And I told my wife the day I was diagnosed, I said, sweetheart, I know the odds are grim, but I'm telling you, in my mind, there is a 100% chance that I will be in the 20 to 30% of the people that survive this cancer. And then I decided I'd put forth extraordinary effort and do everything in my power, every holistic practice. I did, ozone sauna and acupuncture and meditation and my miracle morning every day. I took 70 supplements. I did organic juicing. I did this thing called the Beamer mat. I did coffee enemas, which, like, sticking a tube up your butt to do coffee. Like, that's extraordinary effort right there. And once again, the doctors were kind of blown away, but I beat the cancer like very quickly. I was in remission within a matter of months. And I still had to do 3 years of chemo and so on and so forth. But anyway, that's the long story, I guess. But that's kind of what has led to my life's work and the work that I do now, trying to help other people.
Real quick, I just wanted to, I was listening to some of the stuff that you did alternatively. How did you learn to do that? Because I know a lot of people, are battling cancer right now. And I know, meditation, prayer, all that's huge. But where did you learn to do, the coffee enema? Was it Truth About Cancer? Was it?
It was all of it. So I did not want to do chemotherapy. When I was sitting down with this oncologist, and I didn't, it was my first time meeting him, right? So I didn't know his intentions or his heart. And my wife's there with me, and he's telling me that I've got this, 30% chance of surviving at best. And he said, if you don't start chemo, you've got a few weeks to live. And I said, honestly, I don't want to do chemo. I want to cure this holistically. Like, I view chemo as poison, and I don't want to poison my body. I want to strengthen my body so that it can heal.
Right.
And he said, Hal, I appreciate that you want to do that, but you don't have that kind of cancer. This isn't a slow growing tumor that you can test things with and see how it works. And then, do chemo as a last resort. He said, the way I see it, you have a few weeks to live. And again, I didn't know this doctor. I didn't know his heart. My wife is squeezing my hand as hard as she can, and she's crying. And I'm kind of taking that, I'm kind of, I guess I was skeptical going, I thought he was using this as a scare tactic to get me to do chemo. And I'm kind of like, you know, flipping him the bird in my head going like, don't stop telling me in front of my wife that I'm going to die in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? And so I said, hey, well, can we have, you know, I'd like to take 24 hours to go home and talk about this and sleep on this. Cause the chemotherapy that they recommended, which I ended up doing, and I'll explain why in a second, but it was 650 hours of chemotherapy in 8 months. It's one of the most intensive, aggressive, which is why the survival rate's so bad, because they die from the chemo, if not the cancer, right?
Yeah.
So we went home and we Googled my cancer and basically found out that the doctor's not exaggerating. This kills you in a matter, once you have it, you've got a few weeks to live. And most people actually die because they get misdiagnosed with like pneumonia or something else. They take antibiotics. They think they've got something else, and then they're dead in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like my hand was forced, and I went back in and I went, you know, it was like, we have to do, I actually called one of the best holistic doctors in the world. That was my last ditch effort. He's famous, Dr. Brzezinski. He cured Suzanne Summers all naturally.
Right.
And I called and he said, and I didn't talk to him. I talked to his assistant. She relayed the message, do the chemo. He said, you don't have a cancer, that we have no success curing your cancer naturally. No one that I know of has ever done that. So it killed me, because I'm like, every fiber of my being was like, I don't want to, who knows what the effects of this chemo are, especially with how horrific the chemo, like this intensive routine. And so anyway, so I just started, I decided my decision, and here's anybody listening, this is really important. Part of what I wanted to do doing this naturally was not only for me, it was for other people. I thought, I want to show people that you can beat cancer in a positive way to build your body up rather than poison it with chemo. Then I can help other people. And so that was part of what killed me to go, I don't want to go the route that everyone else is going, that I don't think is great. And when I finally went that route, I decided I'm going to do everything holistically as if that's all I were doing, in conjunction with chemotherapy. And because I did that, my body responded. I was building it up. I was detoxing my liver. I was doing all these things that, you know, 99.9% of people are, my doctors, I would always quiz them. Hey, what about this? What about, they knew nothing about it. One of the best oncologists in the world, but he knows nothing about the natural stuff because they're not taught that.
Trained that
So, so I did the truth about cancer. I did, you know, chrisbeatcancer.com. I read the book Radical Remit. There's my books on the shelf. How Not to Die, Life Over Cancer, Chris Beat Cancer, Thank You Cancer, Love, Medicine and Miracles, right? I mean, I read all those, you know, and I also read spiritual books like Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural, which is a lot of study on the mind-body connection, right? So I did both of it together. And I feel like anybody listening to this, if you're going to do chemo, I get it. Like the doctor's going to tell you it's, you know, either that or you're going to die, whatever it is. You've got to do, you have to put all, your extraordinary effort is to research and implement every holistic practice available to us.
Yes.
That's so true.
valuable.
And we don't talk about it, but we've dealt with things along the same line, and we're going through that now. So it's good to hear your success story. Can you talk to us a little bit about your 5-minute rule? Because I think that's important about people's mindset is a part of that healing too, right? And if you don't have that, if you aren't able to stay positive during those times, you know, I feel like it affects your overall well-being and maybe your ability to defeat it. So can you talk a little bit about your 5-minute rule? I think it's important.
Yeah, I will. And I want to just echo what you said, which is our thoughts affect our biology. Our emotions affect our biology. And I am no scientist, and I can't give you I've read it all, but I can't regurgitate it. But the mind-body connection, here's my layman's explanation. Our body has roughly 40 trillion cells, and those cells do whatever they're told. And most people, when they get a diagnosis like I did, they live in fear, and then it's a downward spiral into death. If they get a diagnosis like I did when I was told I would never walk again, right? Then they live in fear, and they're like, I'm never going to walk again. I'm never going to walk again. Oh my God, what if I never walk again? And our cells go, well, I guess we're never walking again. And they respond. But when you decide I'm going to walk again, there is no other option. Your cells go, oh, well, I guess we got to get to work because this person is committed to walking again. Hey, I'm going to beat cancer no matter what. There's no other option. I affirmed that every single day. I had affirmations. My miracle morning was, for the entire duration of cancer, was focused all of my mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical energy on I'm going to heal no matter what. There's no other option.
Yes.
And I believe your body responds. And that's why I took my first step so quickly. But the foundation of it is this 5-minute rule. So I'm glad that you brought this up. When the doctors called in my parents and they said, we're concerned with Hal's mental and emotional well-being. Now, this was 2 weeks after my car accident. And this was before I had I was out of the coma for only 1 week. I was still being told I was never going to walk again. And they called my parents in and they said, we're concerned. We think Hal is in denial or he's delusional because every time we interact with him, he's always smiling and laughing and telling us jokes. And they go, frankly, that's not normal. That's not normal for a 20-year-old that's being told he's never going to walk again. Like, he should be scared and he should be sad and he should be depressed and he should be angry. So they sent my dad in to talk to me and find out how I was, quote unquote, really feeling. They're like, you got to get to the bottom of it. Hal has to admit the way he's feeling so that we can, our psychologist can work with him and get him through it. And the emotional healing can begin, but he has to face the demons, if you will. And so my dad came in and he expressed the doctor's concerns. He said, Hal, I know you like to be positive, but it's okay to be scared and sad and angry and depressed. You got to feel those emotions. How are you really feeling? And because, my dad at that time, like his eyes are teared up and swollen and he's like, he's scared for his son. And now the doctors just told him that I was in denial and I got to admit my real emotions. And I really went inside when he asked me to admit how I was really feeling. And I go, am I covering up my, emotions? Am I deep down? Am I scared? Am I sad? Am I depressed? Am I angry? And it took about 30 seconds. And I looked at my dad. I looked him in the eye and I said, Dad, I thought you knew me better than that. And I smiled and he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, remember, I live my life by the 5-minute rule that I learned in my Cutco sales training, by the way, from my mentor.
Right, yeah.
And he said, remind me what the 5-minute rule is again. And I said, the 5-minute rule states that when something goes wrong, in other words, when something happens that upsets you, you give yourself 5 minutes to bitch, moan, complain, cry, feel sorry for yourself, vent, punch a wall, like whatever you got to do, whatever emotions bubble up, feel them fully. Don't deny them. Don't push them down. And he would teach us to literally set our timer on our phone for 5 minutes. Now, this was in the context of sales disappointments, right? Like a customer canceled their order, but I had practiced it for 1.5 years and I practiced it all the time, no matter what happened. If I was in traffic, instead of spending 30 minutes in traffic frustrated, I would set my timer for 5 minutes. I would be angry for 5 minutes. This is bullshit. I need to be at my appointment. I'm late. And then when the timer went off, my mentor always taught me there's 3 very powerful words that you say out loud or to yourself, but I always said them out loud.
Yes.
Can't change it.
Change it.
It was an acknowledgement. I can't change it. I can't change what happened 5 minutes ago. So there is no value in wishing that I could. There's no value in resisting reality, in wishing that thing didn't happen, in feeling upset about it, depressed about it, angry about it, stressed about it, frustrated. There's no value. The only intelligent choice is to say, I can't change it. Take a deep breath, smile, and say, look, I'm going to focus on what I can control. And I said, Dad, the car accident was 2 weeks ago. I applied the 5-minute rule when I found out what happened. I can't change that I was in a car accident, but I said, I've thought about, there's only one of 2 possibilities. Number 1, the doctors are right and I will never walk again. And I'm very aware that's a real possibility. I don't know what's happening inside my bones. I don't know if I'm going to heal. But the second possibility, Dad, is I might walk again. There are such things as miracles. I don't know, or maybe my body's just going to heal. And I said, the doctors may be experts in medicine, but they're not experts in me. And I said, so here's the deal, Dad. I have completely, after my 5 minutes was up, I've accepted the worst case scenario. If I never walk again and I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, I promise you, I will be the happiest, most grateful person that you've ever seen in a wheelchair. because I'm in a wheelchair either way. And I will never let my circumstances, my unchangeable circumstances, define my emotional well-being. I said, so, and you know, he's like trying not to cry. And I go, Dad, I know you and Mom are worried about me. You have nothing to worry about, because the worst case scenario is I'm a happy individual. I said, but the second possibility is I might walk again. And I said, I'm putting all of my energy into that while I simultaneously accept the worst case scenario. And I'm visualizing walking again. I'm praying about it. I'm imagining it. I'm talking about it. I'm embodying that possibility. And so for anybody listening, the 5-minute rule, pretty simple. When something goes wrong, you set your timer for 5 minutes and you give yourself 5 minutes to feel bad about it, feel sorry for yourself, get upset. When the timer goes off, take a deep breath and say, can't change it. And acknowledge that there's no value in dwelling on that thing you can't change. It's time to accept what you can't change, accept it unconditionally, be at peace with it. Doesn't mean you're happy with it, but you're at peace. You're in between happiness and sadness is that state of being where when you accept life as it is, there's no resistance, there's no anguish, there's no inner turmoil. There's just a state of peace. And from that place, you can move forward and focus on the things that are in your control. And so I think that's become, you know, when I got cancer, it was the same thing. I can't change that I have cancer, but I can choose to be the happiest and most grateful I've ever been while I endure the most difficult time in my life. And if you're enduring a difficult time now, or I'm sure we've all got stuff ahead, right?
Right.
You can make the conscious choice to accept your life unconditionally, be at peace with it, and focus only on the things that are within your control. And the last thing I'll say on this is the only thing that we ultimately have control over is ourselves. How we think, how we feel, what we do. So own that. Don't blame your inner world on the outer world. Don't blame it on the election. Don't blame it on COVID-19. Don't blame it on a bankruptcy or a job loss or a divorce. I'm not trying to be insensitive. Like my heart goes out to you. It doesn't mean it's easy. I'm just giving you what for me has been the strategy that has allowed me to move through a car accident, move through cancer, move through financial loss, all of these things while maintaining a calm, peaceful, positive, proactive demeanor that has allowed me to move through it and not suffer even when I was in pain.
Yeah, that's, it's such an important tool for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even, I don't know that most people could be an entrepreneur if you can't get past some of those things that happen in your life, because it's a constant, right? For any entrepreneur, you're constantly being battling those things and those thoughts.
Things come up all the time.
Yeah. I want to touch on something that we kind of glazed over, and you have 2 incredible books, and you don't have 2 incredible books. I should go back and say that. The Miracle Morning is kind of, and I didn't realize this, but it's kind of like a chicken soup for the soul in the way that you've created the Miracle Morning for all walks of life, for Miracle Morning for entrepreneurs, Miracle Morning for parents. What are some of the other ones? Oh, there they all are right behind you.
There's the Miracle Morning for college students, Miracle Morning for writers, for network marketers, for entrepreneurs, for parents and families, for couples, for teachers. Our most recent one is for teachers, and it's amazing. I just want to mention this. A few days ago, I was going through my old journals, and I found in 2016, I wrote the 10-year vision for the Miracle Morning movement. And one of the parts of the vision was that I had a vision of it being practiced in every school in the world, or at least as many as possible. I thought if every teacher began the day by leading their students through meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and journaling, the 6 practices of the Miracle Morning, I thought the amount of empathy that students would feel for each other, right? That could end bullying. The amount of calm, clarity, and focus students would have would combat the ADHD challenges that we have, the focus challenges, right?
Have.
All of the benefits. I thought someone that suffers from that. But that was the vision. And now the Miracle Morning for Teachers came out last year, and we have hundreds of, I think it's right now, it's about hundreds of teachers that start every day with their students with the Miracle Morning. And we've heard the outcomes from those individuals are, that it's always been their most challenged students have had amazing breakthroughs in their life. So the Miracle Morning, the original book, started impacting so many people that a friend of mine came and he said, Hal, he's actually a sales trainer. And he said, Hal, have you ever thought about doing a Miracle Morning book series? And I said, it's crossed my mind, but it's not really a priority. And he said, well, I've shared the Miracle Morning with everyone on my sales team. I give the book to every new person that comes on our team, and they have to read it as a requirement. And he said, every salesperson that's doing the Miracle Morning is having their best results. And I was thinking you could do a Miracle Morning for salespeople. And that would be a good for, and so I go, well, let's co-author it, whatever. Like, it was organic. I never had this plan for this chicken soup for the soul, empire
Formula,
or whatever.
yeah.
It just kind of rolled out organically.
That's great, man. And and we hear you have over 20 bestsellers, I think I read somewhere. Did you ever
I think we have 12 or 13 books in the series now. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. But I want to go back to the miracle equation, because we kind of ran over it real quick. And I actually had to write it down because I wanted to quote you. You said, if you do this, you cannot fail. And that's something that's so important powerful for entrepreneurs, because, and I see what you're saying, but I think there's a lot of people who would stand back and go, he's crazy. Like, that makes no sense, because if you're going down the wrong direction, or you've started a business that's never going to work. Yeah, it just never work. If you're thinking about a business that, you're trying to sell ice to Eskimos, and it's just not a business that's going to work, they're thinking at that point you've failed and you're just not going to be successful. But what did you actually mean by that when you wrote that? Yeah,
that philosophy comes from Jim Rohn. And it's a Jim Rohn philosophy that I've kind of taken adapted to my life. Let me start by saying this. So the Miracle Equation is the book that you're referencing. It's my most recent book. And the subtitle of the book kind of explains this a little bit. It's the 2 decisions that move your biggest goals from possible to probable to inevitable. And the decisions are unwavering faith and extraordinary effort. Now, at first glance, those feel a little bit too simple. Like, okay, so I have to believe in myself and work hard. Yeah, got it. I already knew that, right? It's a little more nuanced than that. And so let me dive into your question, and then we're going to circle back on the 2 decisions. So your question is, right, you quoted me about, when you do this, if you apply the Miracle Equation, you cannot fail. And here's the idea, is that if you get clear on what your objective is, okay, and you establish the faith that you can accomplish that objective, which most of us don't do. Most of us, we only have faith around things that we know for sure we can do. We tend to pursue that which we have a probability, right? We rarely pursue goals that are improbable. How often does somebody go, you know what? I don't think there's a very good chance of me reaching this goal, so I'm going to commit everything I have to it. Like, no. Right. But Dan Caldwell's do, right? Like, Tap Out, great example. Like, you guys lived that. You and the whole crew lived unwavering faith that you guys could take this idea and make it into a successful brand and a successful business. And then the second decision, you guys put forth extraordinary effort, right? You guys hustled. You went to every show on the regional circuit. I know your guys' story. Right? You literally are the living epitome of the Miracle Equation, Dan. Unwavering faith, even though the odds of you guys succeeding with Tap Out were slim to none, right? Like, just the niche, like, hey, I have an idea. Let's make a clothing brand in this mixed martial arts world that's hardly even known right now. UFC wasn't as big as they are. So you lived it. But if you study the world's most successful people, those are the 2 decisions that they make. That they will maintain unwavering faith. And it has to be unwavering, because very rarely is the path to success a straight line. Very rarely does it not come with setbacks that infuse us, that cause us self-doubt. And most entrepreneurs, either they have self-doubt from the beginning, so they never even get out the gate, right? They don't have the faith that they can even do it because they have too much fear. Or maybe they have the uneducated, uninformed optimism, and they're like, I can do it. But as soon as they hit an obstacle, as soon as you encounter, oh shit, I didn't expect this to happen. Never mind. I'm going to go back to mom's basement. I'm going to go back, get a regular job, right? So you have that faith has to be unwavering, because when you get that setback, you go, all right, now I got to pivot. I was trying to sell ice to Eskimos. Damn, that was the wrong angle. I got to go find people that are living in Arizona to go sell ice to, right?
Absolutely.
Or I got to sell something different to the Eskimos. So unwavering faith doesn't mean that you don't pivot. In fact, that's a huge part of it, right? Because when you're maintaining faith towards your outcome, you've got to pivot along the way. And so unwavering faith and extraordinary effort, and going, again, answering, I always take a long time to answer the question, but the question on how do you not fail? If you maintain unwavering faith that you can achieve an outcome, and you put forth extraordinary effort until, and that is the word that allows you to transcend the possibility of failure, is the word until. Maintaining unwavering faith until the result is achieved. Putting forth extraordinary effort until the outcome is reached. And when you maintain those two decisions for as long as it takes, you eventually get there. It's only a matter of time. Time becomes the only variable. And I want to give you one specific example. When I wrote The Miracle Morning, no one knew who I was. I didn't have an audience. I didn't have a blog. I didn't have a platform. I didn't have an email list, right? I just believed I had this Miracle Morning concept that had changed my life so profoundly. And it had changed the lives of virtually everyone that I taught it to, which was at that point was all of my clients, and I would give speeches around town at like Toastmasters, like really small stuff.
Right.
And I knew, though, because it had changed a few dozen people's lives, that to me was evidence that I just have to get it to 1 million people. I don't know how, but I got to figure it out. So I created a mission, change 1 million lives one morning at a time. And I just chose the arbitrary time frame of 1 year, because that's what we do. Like, all right, I'm going to set the goal for a year. I'm going to try to reach 1 million people. And I had been, to be really clear, I had been practicing the miracle equation at that point for, I think, 9 or 10 years. And so I already had that formula. I practiced it through my sales and all of these different things. And so I decided that was my approach. And so I maintained unwavering faith, and I put forth extraordinary effort that first year. And here's my extraordinary effort, just so you have an idea of what I actually did, like tangible things. I did over 150 interviews on other people's podcasts, just one at a time. I'd reach out, do the interview, ask for referrals. Who else do you know that I'd be a good guest on? And I would email those guys. And I just hustled, right?
Right.
And I got on over 150 podcast interviews, having really no connections from day one. I did over 36 speeches all over the United States. I was on 13 television interviews, and I had to pay 10 grand to get a publicist to help me get on all these morning shows. I launched my own podcast to try to build an audience. I did 52 weekly episodes. So that I did everything in my power that I possibly could to reach 1 million people. And keep in mind, you guys, I want you to listen to this. My goal was 1 million. I sold 13,000 copies. Okay, do the math, right? I was 987,000 copies short of my goal. That means data-wise, I was 98.7% a failure. Now, I think most people would go, well, I tried, didn't work out. I'm going to go do something different. I'm going to write another book. I'm going to start a different business. Obviously, this isn't working. I was committed to the miracle equation, maintaining unwavering faith and putting forth extraordinary effort until I achieved the result. So I dusted myself off. Now, by the way, was I discouraged? Hell yes. I think if you do the math, like 13,000 copies a year to get to 1 million copies, it's like 82 years or something like that, right? I was already 30. Like I wasn't going to live that long. But I was like, whatever, I will. And I literally committed in writing, I will dedicate the rest of my life to changing 1 million lives with the Miracle Morning. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'll keep trying. Year 2, I tried again. I think I sold like 27 or 23,000 copies year 2. I'm like, all right, I'm getting better, but I'm nowhere near where I need to be. So I tried again in year 3. I tried again in year 4, and it took 6 years. The 6th year, I finally, and I, done over 400 interviews and all these things, right? but I finally surpassed 1 million copies sold and impacted 1 million people's lives. And that's the point, is if you maintain those two decisions of the miracle equation until you get there, timing is the only variable. It might take you 10 years, right? But I think that a question I was asked once, this is the last thing I'll say on this, is someone said, you know, I heard this adage once, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. And I said that once, and somebody asked me, yeah, I guess that begs the question, what do you believe in enough that you're willing to commit 10 years of your life to see if it works out? And I thought, that's a great question, right? How many of us are willing or committed to something, one thing, for as long as it possibly takes? And if you are, you'll eventually get there. And when you finally do, the timing will always be perfect.
That is so strong, man. I love that. You know, your two books are like, they are the perfect gift for any would-be entrepreneur, a guy who's trying to figure out like, okay, where do I start? You know, how am I going to do this? Or for the parent that's trying to give their kids a boost, you know, like, because sometimes as an entrepreneur, you know, you don't know where to start. You don't know who you should be. I mean, now it's a lot easier than it used to be with YouTube and other things that you can look at. But I mean, when we were starting, you know, there wasn't a lot of places to look. Where are you going to go? It was books. You know, I'd go to my audio bookshelf and there was like, you know, 7 books, and most of them were Tony Robbins. You know, that was the only self-help books you could look at. Yeah. And this is just such a great package. I mean, the Miracle Morning to kind of get yourself right, and then the Miracle Equation to really get your head straight and understand what it's going to take to be successful.
Yeah, it's really.
I love them both.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the way that I kind of explain the two is the Miracle Morning is your daily process for personal development. And then, or I should say your daily practice for personal development. And the Miracle Equation is your process for goal achievement. And you need both, because the Miracle Morning is what enables you to develop yourself into the person who's capable and qualified to achieve the results you want. And then the Miracle Equation gives you, like you said, it's okay, well, here's the mindset that you need and the processes that you have to put in place so that you can achieve those extraordinary results.
I love that. That's wonderful. Now, you're talking about the Miracle Morning. Is there anything that you do with your kids, like as a ritual? Like, is there anything you do to pull them in? Is it meditation or prayer? What do you do with your kids? Can you share?
So we've gone through, it's been very inconsistent. I've tried to push them, like force them to do the Miracle Morning, and that's gotten them to do it with resentment. And then, so where we've gotten now is I believe daily rituals are important, period. And with my kids, I stopped pushing them to do it. And what's happened is my son gravitates toward it more than my daughter. So my son will do the Miracle Morning with me. He'll ask me to do it. We'll meditate together, and he's younger. And my daughter, not so much. But what I've found, and you, as you have kids, as they grow, you find that they do go through these phases, and they literally become different people. Like, there have been times where I'm like, oh my God, my kids are like, they've gone off the deep end. Like, these are not the kids I'm raising. Like, these are not the values I'm instilling. And I've gotten scared. And then, that lasts for a few weeks or a month, and they come back to like normal or even better. And, I'm like, oh, thank God it was temporary, And so that's what I've found is, with my kids, I start the day by affirming for them. I always just tell them positive things. I really believe that our voice or our words become our kids' inner voice. That's right. And so I'm using the Miracle Morning to become the best father that I can be for them. And then I'm using that practice. So it's like they're benefiting from my Miracle Morning, Right. But yeah, we, in all transparency, we do not have a daily Miracle Morning ritual, but we do go through phases of, we'll do it on just random days. My son will go, wake me up for the Miracle Morning tomorrow, Dad. And then I keep telling my daughter that, hey, if you want to co-author the Miracle Morning for kids, we got to get on this, So yeah, I'll let you know how it works out.
That's true. Really, we lead by example, right? I mean, we can't make our kids do anything. You can't make anybody do anything. You're going to, even other entrepreneurs, we can tell them all we want. We can coach them and try to lead them in the right direction, but really we lead everybody by example.
That's right.
Do you, I want to go back to your books for a second, because it's important, because, I think it's important how, I'm sure your kids were at different ages when you were writing your books. And I want to kind of understand, for the people out there that are looking to write a book, can you walk us through a
Or
little bit
design a
how,
course
or
or
design a
whatever
course or
it
anything that
is
takes
right
lots
now.
of concentration? What's your process for doing that while you also have kids in the house and trying not to neglect your family? Because I know it takes, there's an intensity there when you're trying to do that. You're trying to reach into your deepest parts of your mindset to come up with those things that you need to come up with to write that book and those points that you may have experienced. How do you do that?
Right, because some of our parents can't escape. They've got their kids right there. And how
Yeah.
do you not feel negative when you almost look at it like it's disruptive, and then you throw everything to the side and just say, forget it. Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Or what can parents out there do?
What's interesting is, so I'll have a couple answers. One is, and Dan, answering your question specifically, the Miracle Morning is how I wrote the Miracle Morning, right? Like,
oh, really? That
I
makes
woke
sense.
up early while my kids were still asleep, and I had that space to do my Miracle Morning, and then I actually wrote the Miracle Morning during my Miracle Morning. So that's how I actually wrote the book. And I think that for entrepreneurs in general, doing some of that before or after, right? Doing the Miracle Morning, doing the night owl stuff, right, on both sides. And of course, it depends on the age of your kids. I have the other day I was talking to someone, and he said that his strategy. It was Jeff Woods, the author of The One Thing. He said his strategy is his kids. He's very clear with his kids about protecting his time. And I forgot the name he has, but he has it's like his one thing time, or there's a certain name for the time.
Right.
But when his kids come in, he says, look, sometimes daddy's just working on stuff, and I can engage and I can talk to you. Right. And I think he just has it's his one finger to tell them, this is my one thing time. If they come in, he will literally put up the one finger, because he's coached them. He said, hey, will you guys help daddy protect his one thing time? This is the time where I'm doing the most important things to support our family. And will you guys protect? And so he's actually had just a real conversation with the kids. And I think his daughter's like, 4. So, I mean, she's not like she's an older kid. She's relatively young. But she knows that when daddy's doing his one thing time, that she has agreed to support that. And what he's done is he'll just reward her with positive, verbal feedback, where he'll come out after he's done with that work time and go, hey, Daphne, thank you so much for helping daddy protect his one thing time. It is so important to me. What did you need? I want, it really means a lot. What did you need? And then, so it's really created this mutual kind of respect where she helps him protect his time. And then she feels like she's doing something, he rewards her for that. He acknowledges her. So she feels like she's really, supporting dad, and it feels good for her too.
Absolutely.
That's so
yeah.
good.
That's really smart, because we're trying to put some of those points together. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can handle that. We like to personally, when our kids come up, we try to, if we can, it's not always possible, but we just try to involve them in whatever we're trying to figure out. Sometimes you can't always do that, obviously, if you're writing a book, but you may have that moment where you have to kind of step back for a second and go, oh, daddy's trying to come up with an idea that, and I can't quite figure it out. And this is what I'm trying to go over. I'm trying to understand what's the best way to respond to somebody who comes at me with a negative answer. Or something like that, whatever it might be.
It is that we're
but we try to involve our kids in that questioning and see sometimes they come up with great answers. Not always, but
4-year-old, he's a problem solver, so he likes to be involved. So I think you need to observe your kids and go from there.
Do you want your kids to be entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'll support them being whatever they want, but for sure, I'm a big believer in the benefits of being an entrepreneur, and hopefully, by the time they're ready to, I will have learned all the lessons so that I can say, all right, here's what you got to do. Like, Daddy messed up a lot of this, right? But here's the right way to do it. So absolutely, and actually, they're attending a school called Acton Academy, which I encourage you to look if there's one in your area. I think they start, depending on the school, it's ACTON, Acton Academy. It is a school to build entrepreneurial children. Okay. And they teach you, it's not even as much the business skills, not at that age at least. It's how to be self-reliant, how to solve problems. But yeah, it's a completely different model of kids. Like, they're very self-reliant in the school. They're not told what to do. The teacher is not called a teacher. It's called a guide. the teacher is not allowed to answer any question other than with a question that empowers the student to go find the answer either from a peer or from online. Anyway, so there's so many, they have weekly meetings. They set their own rules. The rules are not set by the teachers other than you can't harm or distract anyone in school. Other than that, the students form their own rules and then vote on their, anyway, so I'm going into too much detail,
No,
but
this is so valuable.
Yeah.
We're
oh
talking-
yeah, so we've got them in a school that's literally instilling the values of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I went to a school something like that in junior high. I got kicked out, but it was they basically gave you all your work at the beginning of the year, and you were just, they kind of left it up to you. You just, you know, if you were going to stand around and read another book or whatever you were going to do at that time, you had your own time during that class time.
Wow.
And you can do what you want with it. But you
That's
did
awesome.
have to
Very
get
similar.
through
Yeah,
your-
that's really cool.
Yeah, there were a lot of uh-oh. Hi, baby. So,
I love when the kids join. It's awesome.
yes. So I really wanted to ask you about, I loved your Father's Day episode of your podcast, the Achieve Your Goals podcast. It was, I think you and John are on there, and you guys are kind of going back and forth discussing some of the, you know, your ideals of fatherhood, that you guys discussed on this walk that you guys had. And one thing I think it was really eye-opening is the part where you, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but maybe you can explain it better. You talked about how if you put a bunch of dads in a room and you asked them what was the most important thing in their life, they would always, and if they said, is your family the most important thing in your life? They would all raise their hand and said, absolutely, yes, my family's the most important thing in my life. And then you said, then you asked to look at their schedule, that it just wouldn't reflect that same answer.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about that, and how do we fix that?
Yeah, that was a big, again, when I had cancer, right, it was, you know, I was basically not working for 8 months in the hospital for the majority of 8 months getting chemo. And so I had a lot of time to, you know, to reflect and think about things. And I realized that I was a workaholic when I got cancer. In fact, possibly part of the reason that I got cancer, you know, just overworking, stressed out. And if you would have asked me, what's your number one priority in life? I would have always said, before I had cancer, I would have said family. But if you would have looked at my schedule, you would have seen a lot of inconsistencies. You would have said, well, yeah, for someone that says family's number one, you sure work a lot. You sure do travel a lot. You sure do miss a lot of weekends because you got another book coming out or some huge project that you now are justifying why, you know, talking to my wife, sweetheart, hey, just, you know, I got to work today, blah, blah, blah. And, so that was the big breakthrough. And I thought when the cancer journey was over, or even in the middle of it, I thought, I am not going to live this way anymore. And by the way, I want to mention a part of the reason that I justified in my mind working so much. I'm on this mission to change millions of lives, maybe, you know, hopefully billion, whatever, right? I'm on a mission, and a lot of us are. Most entrepreneurs are on this mission. They want to impact people. And I had confused quantity over quality. My justification was, well, yeah, sweetheart, I know we got this family thing, but I'm over here changing the world, and these people need me. Millions and millions and millions of people need me to come and support them and help them. I've got it. This is my life's mission. But there's 3 people at home, and the impact that I have on 1 million people will never be as intimate, as profound, as deep, or as lasting as the impact I can have on these 3. And when I had cancer, I switched it in my mind. I went, oh, impacting millions of people is not more valuable than impacting these 3. And so that was a big epiphany for me. And then I decided I'm going to start aligning how I live my life with my number one priority, which is my family. And so the way that I've done that, there's a few different things. Number one, my Miracle Morning, my family is infused through all of it. So I have affirmations on being the husband that I feel my wife deserves, and being the father that I feel my kids deserve. When I read every morning, I have a rule that I have to read 5 to 10 pages out of a parenting or a marriage book before I pull out the business book that I'm reading or the spiritual book that I'm reading. And what that does, that act in and of itself reminds me that My family is the number one priority. Just doing it first. They are my number one priority. So that's the first thing, is when I'm developing myself in alignment with my highest priority, which are Ursula, my wife, and my kids, Sophie and Halston. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I used to do my miracle morning in our media room on like the other side of the house. And then Ursula, my wife, would come. She'd wake up the kids. They'd go get ready for school and make lunches. And then right before they left, they'd go, "Dad, we're leaving." And I'd come down and kiss them, and I'd go back up and go into work. And I realized that I wasn't beginning the day with my family. So now I wake my kids up at 7 a.m. I spend the first hour, it's literally family time. I make lunches with them. So that's a part of it. Every morning, the first hour is with my family. And then my wife I used to delegate, right? Divide and conquer, sweetie. I'll work on the business. You take care of all the stuff with the family. So she drove them to school. Now I do just as much driving as she does. I take them on Tuesday and Thursday. I pick them up Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? And that quality time in the car, having dance parties, right? Like, is amazing. And then, and then at 5 o'clock, I used to work till 6, 7, whenever I was done. Now I'm off at 5, and I mean, there are rare exceptions when, I'll be like, all right, hey fam, I'm working on this thing. It's going to take a little longer, but for the most part, 90% of the time I'm off at 5, and it's family time until the end of the day. And I go in, again, I used to delegate reading to my wife. Now I'm in there. We're both reading. Last night I read, right? And now we pray before bed. This is actually new. My wife and I spirituality it's like one of my highest priorities. But I realized that we weren't doing it with the kids, because when we were taking them to church for a while, COVID hit, so that stopped. They didn't like the online church. We weren't praying with them. And so it's been on my to-do list for a long time to infuse spirituality more with my kids. And so my wife and I had a couples retreat the other week, and I'm like, hey, I want to infuse this with the kids. So now we read a daily devotional before dinner starts every single day. That's a new ritual, and it's sticking, and it's been amazing. And it facilitates discussion amongst our family on how would you respond in the situation. And then at night, and this has been my favorite, at night we finish with prayer. And I thought, I grew up, going to church, and that instilled a lot of my moral values, and even just a relationship with God, with a higher power, to where when I was in those dark times by myself, I had faith. Like, I had faith that in God, and that things would turn out. And I realized our kids, we haven't taught them how to pray.
Right.
So when they're at college and they're off by themselves and they're afraid, if they don't, if they can't, if they don't feel like there's some higher power, right? I think that's important for all of us. And so now every night we pray. Every person takes turns praying to God out loud with our hands folded and our head bowed. And we all pray. We say, we thank God for something. Yeah. And then if we want, we ask God for help with something that we want in our lives. And it's been such a beautiful ritual every day. So yeah, I try to begin the day with my family and end the day with my family, and spend time in between.
We try to do that too.
I didn't know you did the prayer. Like, for us, it's so powerful. And I feel like, as Dan said, we don't really talk about it, but when I faced my own health crisis, prayer was huge. And with my son, seeing how, prayer and mindset, I love how he's on this journey with us.
And we even try to have our 1-year-old say prayers too with us every night. So,
she's really good.
And she does her little part. Yeah, she has the amen part down for sure. So one more last question, because I know you got a whole day in front of you.
I have a few more minutes.
We have a million questions.
We got a lot of questions for you, because you're such a wealth of knowledge here.
Wait. I just wanted to hit on this, because we're dealing with families and relationships, and a lot of people, I was going to say, I don't know if you know, but a lot of people that are emailing us, their relationships are on the verge of crumbling with everything going on. And you brought it up. I had a note here about how you don't read a business book before you read a parenting, or you get into a little bit of parenting or relationship book. Can you share one of each, a parenting and relationship book for our audience?
Yeah. One of my favorite parenting books is Hold On to Your Kids. And it's by, I can't think of the main author, but it's the secondary author is Gabor Mate. hold on to your kids. And it's essentially about our kids today are being raised by each other. And we need to kind of take them back in and really spend more quality time and instill, be actively instilling values and principles that will serve them for a lifetime. So that's one of my favorite books. And then on marriage, it's called Conscious Loving. And that's one of my favorite books on marriage. And it really is, if you can live by it, and it's of course easier said than done, to live, what it is that you read. But it really is where you take nothing personally, and you realize that your partner is there. They exist as themselves. And if one of us is upset, that's our own issue. Right. And so it teaches you a method of communicating where you own everything. So instead of saying, you make me angry, you are upsetting me, no, it's like, no, that's not conscious communication. Conscious communication is, hey, when you say this, I find that I get triggered and I feel this way. And I just wanted to let you know that. So it's no blame. It's no condemning. It's no vilifying. And then the other person gets to go, wow, I received that. And then because they're not being attacked, you're being vulnerable. They're able to empathize and go, how might I respond differently in the future? And then it creates this two-way, really conscious dialogue where you're two human beings that aren't losing your shit on each other, right?
Yeah.
And you're really coming from a place of conscious loving. So.
No, I think you mentioned something about that's really helped you and your wife's relationship. And there are other things that you do quickly, just that you and your wife do to try to keep your relationship strong?
I did forget to mention, scratch those books. The Miracle Morning for Couples is the one you want for your relationship.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the Miracle Morning for Parents and Families is the one you want for your kids. I'm a terrible promoter.
No, we got that.
Both great books.
We already hit that on our intro.
Yeah.
Awesome. So one thing that my wife and I do, so a big thing that I do is, it was a real paradigm shift that I had a few years ago. And it was the idea that, we tend to keep score as human beings and often unconsciously, but we tend to mirror behavior. So it's like, oh, you're being really sweet to me, I'm going to be sweet to you. Right? Oh, you're angry and you're being rude. Well, then screw you. Right? And we tend to mirror behavior. And I decided that instead of playing that game, if you will, I thought, what if I just make my mission in life to make my wife's life amazing? What if that was my sole singular mission projected toward her that had nothing to do with how she treated me on any given day? In fact, I went as far as saying, if she's rude to me or angry or having a bad day, I need to work harder to make her life amazing. So part of making her life amazing is being empathetic and being understanding and being patient and being loving and creating a space for her to feel anger without me taking it personally. So that for me, and the way I do that is my affirmations. I have an affirmation that affirms every day, hey, remember, your mission in life today is to make Ursula's life amazing. And that has nothing to do with how she shows up and 100% to do with how I show up.
But then
so that for me has been the biggest game changer.
It becomes reciprocal, right? I mean, you start, that becomes you, and then that becomes her because of how you are speaking with her, relating with her. I can see that, I'm sure that comes back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely does. And then, if she does lose, if she gets angry and loses it, and then I respond by being calm and stuff, then, it takes 5 minutes and then she goes, I'm sorry, that wasn't my best moment, so it's it's amazing how when you don't respond to anger with anger or respond to judgment with judgment, and you respond with love, it kind of diffuses the situation. And, you have to respond with love and then wait. Right. And then, let the love kind of grow, like a little seed kind of grow, and then, create something beautiful between you.
That's so good. And you had an affirmation. It said, I am committed to having a close, loving, and playful partnership that supports both of us, bringing our greatest gifts to the world. I don't know where I pulled it, but I wrote it down. I'm like, Dan, we have to start saying this.
Yeah. So and then I got about 14 elbows in the side. See this? You see what Hal does? You see what Hal does with his wife?
Stop.
Yeah, I'm never gonna live that down, Hal. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's funny.
Okay, so the last question about your kids. I wanna, I think it's all important for all of us. And you actually said something, I had to write it down because I wanted to quote you perfectly. The most important thing in my world and life is that I can influence my children in a positive way to set them up for a great life. And I think every father wants that for their kids. And as an entrepreneur, I think we try to guide our kids in a way that we're feeling powerful, and things that, some of the books that we discover, and influencers that we discover, and mentors, we want to pass those on to our kids. If there's something that you could leave with your kids, one thing that you could, a small piece of knowledge that you could leave with your kids that they could use to help get through life, what would that piece of knowledge be?
Yes, that's a hard question to answer because there's always going to be, more than one. But for me, one of the most fundamental guiding principles for my life has been do the right thing, not the easy thing.
Mhm.
And my kids know that, by heart. In fact, my wife, at dinner I think it was last night, actually, we were reading that devotional, and then she goes, Dad says, do the right thing, not the easy thing. And my daughter's like, of course, we know Dad says that. We hear it all the time, right?
Yes.
But remember, I'll say this again, your words become your kid's inner voice. So make sure you're not criticizing them, that make sure that you're not catching them doing things wrong. You're catching them doing things right. You're breathing belief and life and love and possibility into your kids. And so, so for me, that's one of the guiding principles, do the right thing, not the easy thing. And I think that for all of us, it's like in every moment we're faced with a choice. Should I eat this? The easy thing, right? That tastes good, or the right thing, And
Yeah.
sometimes it's the same decision, but more often than not, it takes a little more discipline to do that right thing, than that easy thing.
100%. And the last question, you have all these incredible books to leave to your kids. What a great, beautiful gift that you can leave to your kids. But if you couldn't pick one of your own books, what's a book that you would leave for your kid to help guide their life?
Probably Loving What Is. And again, that's a hard one to pick one, but it's by Byron Katie. Loving What Is. It's been one of the most impactful books that I've ever read. And so it's essentially, it takes what I teach, which is like accept life as it is and be at peace with it. And it goes further and it says, no, don't just accept life as it is. Love it fully. Even love your cancer. Love your car accident, love your divorce, love your bankruptcy. Like, it really teaches you how to go beyond being at peace with the things that are challenging for you to actually embracing them as perfect and necessary, and loving everything exactly as it is.
That's awesome, Hal. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. You are one of our target people that we picked right out the gate when we started this podcast. We wanted to get you on here. So we're so happy to have you on here. Where can people find you, and how can they get a hold of you? We do want to talk about that. We at the opening of the podcast, you didn't hear it, but we did talk about your film that's coming out December 12th. I believe they can go to miraclemorning.com to get tickets.
Yeah, miraclemorningmovie.com.
Miraclemorningmovie.com to get tickets. Tell us a little bit about where they can find you and how to get those tickets.
Yeah, that's right now. That's my mission. My mission in life, to elevate consciousness. The next phase of that is this movie. And we've been filming this documentary for 6 years. Wow. I was diagnosed with cancer halfway through, and I ended up, I called our filmmaker and I said, hey, the movie's on hold. I've got to fight for my life and live for my kids. Yeah. And the filmmaker is a good friend of mine. And after he consoled me, he said, hey, I think that we should film you beating this cancer, because I know you're going to beat it, and it will inspire a lot of people if we can capture your journey. And I was kind of taken aback. I thought, that's not what this movie is about. It's about, teaching people how to start their day and start their miracle morning. And it shows some of the world's most successful people. It shows their morning routines. But I'm so grateful that I finally let him, he's pleasantly persistent, and I finally agreed, and he filmed me in my darkest hour. I mean, for 8 months, he filmed me getting chemo. He filmed me on pain management. He filmed me in tears. He filmed me, bald, skinny, doing my miracle morning at the hospital. I mean, he filmed the whole journey. And this movie for everybody right now, people are struggling. We're struggling individually and we're struggling collectively as a society. And I feel like this movie is coming out at the perfect time where it shows you how to immediately shift your mindset and implement a daily practice that will allow you to take control of your life. And we were doing a theater release in May. COVID hit. That fell apart, of course.
Yep.
And so now we're launching the movie. We're doing something really special to make it really valuable for people. Because again, we don't want this to just entertain you. The movie is designed to change someone's life, just like the Miracle Morning book did. And so what we're doing, if you go to miraclemorningmovie.com and you get a ticket, what you get is it's a ticket to the live online world premiere, so you can stream it at home on your TV or computer. But it comes with, immediately following the movie, is a Miracle Morning implementation training, so that you go from watching the movie and understanding and being inspired to actually, I just recorded this the other day. It's like, hey, here's step 1, step 2, step 3. Even if you've never been a morning person, here's how you can start the Miracle Morning and change your life tomorrow. And then following that is a live Q&A where you can ask me questions. And then we finish it. You're going to leave with 2 things. You'll leave the premiere with a brand new and improved Miracle Morning 30-day challenge, so that we support you in making this a lifelong habit. And you're going to leave with the digital download of the movie, so that you can share it. You can, share it with your friends and family, and you can watch it as many times as you want. So all of that is at miraclemorningmovielive.com. And then Dan, I've got a 20% off discount code for your listeners.
Oh, that's great.
You go to miraclemorningmovie.com. When you're checking out, it's like the last page. It'll have room for a discount code. Type in all capital letters, Miracle 2020, Miracle 2020, and you'll get 20% off for your ticket. And and we're going to have thousands, if not tens of thousands of people watching this live around the world on 12/12/2020. And if you're listening to this, I'd be honored and love for you to be a part of this and experience this film and all the love and intention that went into it.
And you are changing lives, Hal. And you always give 1,000%, whether it's your podcast, Achieve Your Goals podcast, or your books, Miracle Morning or The Miracle Equation, and now your film. You're always giving 1,000%. And I know you're changing the world. We're so happy to have you on the Pretty and Punk podcast. And I will definitely be at your premiere. I don't want to miss that. We'll be watching from home here in our COVID protected home. And, but it's gonna be so good to see that, because as much as I know you, I'm sure there's so much in that film that is going to be inspiring and will inspire our family and our kids. Our kids will be sitting down watching it with us too. So thank you for having us and for being on our show, and we will catch you soon.
I love you guys. Thanks,
brother.
Huge hearts. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe. We love you.